Welcome back to the Paranormal Girl podcast. I am your host, Kristen. All of life is designed to awaken us. Today's guest has had quite the journey and experiences to arrive at this truth. Today, we will be exploring revelations and insights that she has learned about life and the beyond. Concepts like heaven and hell, reincarnation, transitioning from the physical, why we are even here. There's some really profound information to be learned from today's chat. I think you guys are really going to enjoy this one. Before we launch into it, though, I would like to congratulate Damian Christie for his recent interview and write-up in Ghost Buzz magazine, the October issue 2. Woo! Well done, my friend. So proud of you, dude. I would also like to call attention to the accomplishment of another friend of mine. Late last year, I was welcomed into the Society for Arcane Studies, headed up by Jason Cordova. I have had the pleasure of having Jason on as my guest a couple of times. It's always a great conversation. In addition to his ongoing work with the Society, all while earning his master's in folkloristics and applied heritage studies, this year, alongside Alejandro Rojas, he helped launch UAPdiscovery.org, which is an online crowdsourcing platform for UAP data and analysis. This effort has grown very quickly in a short amount of time, and now includes folks like Ben Hansen and Brian Bender as their board members. Their mission is to lead a global community of citizen scientists to contribute to the understanding of the UAP mystery and freely, openly share their discoveries. I believe they are well on their way in this regard. If you have not heard of this organization yet and would like to learn more and hopefully become a part of this growing community, that website again is uapdiscovery.org. They offer invaluable resources and education and have tailored their approach to meet the citizen scientist to the curious at whatever level they are at. They offer resources to students, educators, pilots, law enforcement, and more. If you are curious but are unsure where to start to get involved, a very easy step to take would be by joining their forum and registering for any topic that interests you. You can also sign up for their newsletter, which will be launching in the not-too-distant future. Be sure to check it out, folks. You're going to love it. And outstanding work, Jason. All right, let's go ahead and get to today's guest. My guest is an author, spiritual director, and Jungian coach. After many years spent wrestling with existential questions in a Christian context and coming away with answers she found less than satisfying, her path took her on a journey of deep study and exploration of the existential concepts most people have spent considerable time pondering. In 2021, an unexpected paranormal experience would bring her contemplative spirituality and exploration into sharp focus with searing existential clarity. A years-long and still ongoing conversation with the other side that all began with a simple hello. In her recently released book, Through the Veil, A Glimpse into the Afterlife, my guest shares the truths that she has learned on her journey and from those on the other side about karma, heaven and hell, reincarnation, what happens when we die, and how that should impact the way we live right now. Please enjoy my conversation with Brandy Anderson.
My name is Brandy Anderson, and like you already mentioned that's in my book, I had a spiritual awakening in 2014 that sort of sent me on a journey of deep seeking, like ultimate truth, seeking out ultimate truth. And along the way, I studied to become a spiritual director and Jungian coach. So The majority of my work revolves around shadow work, basically how we get out of alignment and then how we come back into alignment and live from a place of peace and connectedness and authenticity. Along the way during the course of my journey, I had a paranormal experience after my grandmother crossed that served to just bring all of my theological and philosophical questions into sharp focus with searing existential clarity. And so from there, I wrote a book, Through the Veil, A Glimpse into the Afterlife, where I share about my communication with my grandmother and other loved ones, but also, and primarily, it's about what happens when we die and how that should impact the way that we live life now.
Mhm. Yeah, yeah. Um, y yeah, I already have so many questions about that journey, how that all kinda came together. I'm very curious once those communications started. But let's tell the audience a little bit about that part of your life because that would come, if I'm recalling correctly, 7 years after your awakening happened, and that
Hmm.
had a great impact on everything. You had a communication with your passed on grandmother, and it came in such a monumental way. I am somebody, I know a lot of people listening are people who feel like they have received messages from their deceased loved ones and like things like, feathers that you requested or a dime with a date on them that's really special to you and it hits. Like it's very special. But the way you received communication was so literal. And tell us about that contact, and when did that happen? What was that like?
Yeah, it is funny you said it's so literal because I am such a rational, logical, very cerebral kind of person, which, my spiritual journey has been upending that. I mean, in a multitude of ways. But it was funny that I probably wouldn't, if it had been any more subtle, I probably wouldn't have even tuned into the fact that she was reaching out. She had to literally type words to me on an
Mhm,
electronic device for me to tap into it. But yeah, so um I should say to begin with that when people are nearing the end of their physical lives, death is imminent. The veil between the spiritual and the physical becomes thin, and this is why a lot of people on their deathbeds report to see, loved ones that aren't actually in the room that have already crossed, or they see people that the other people in the room can't see. They're seeing into the other side, into the spiritual realm. And then at the moment of death, that veil that is already thin opens entirely, which is called a portal, and the spirit just slips through, and it's usually an instantaneous phenomenon, like a split second, and it closes right back up. But my grandmother had an aversion to death. She was afraid to die, and so she put up a fight. And so in her struggle to remain in this physical world and not cross, her portal remained open. And because she was stuck, so to speak, between two realities for a bit, that portal just it remained open. And because she has this open portal now, and I should say, she was only stuck for a short while.
mhm,
She crossed and gained perspective about her situation rather quickly. But because she had this open portal, she was able to push back through and manipulate the physical realm in ways that she would not have been able to without a portal. So that allows a more explicit way of communicating because she has this open portal. People without an open portal, they would have to send more subtle signs for sure. And so a couple months after she crossed, she figured out how to use the smart television to communicate initially. And she turned the television on, navigated to search, and typed the word hello into the search bar. And the family who lives in the house where she crossed, where this was happening, they were horrified. So they ran out of the house screaming in fright, and then they called me immediately. And over the course of time, they saged, prayed, cleansed because they were afraid of what was happening. And ultimately it didn't stop. It would stop in the moment as they were afraid, but then in a few days, like it would happen again, and it would always be like the first word was hello, and then the second time that she reached out, that she navigated to the search again, the word love appeared, and she was trying to communicate that she was coming in love, but everybody was just too horrified to entertain it.
Mhm.
But then ultimately, I said, why don't we engage with whoever this is, whatever this is, and try to just determine who it is, what do they want? I was concerned that it was a hacker, someone in the physical realm manipulating the television, playing a prank. That was where my logical, rational thought process immediately went.
Yep.
And so as we engaged with whoever it was, we immediately became aware that it could not be someone in the physical realm, because whoever it was could read our thoughts in real time. And that rocked us. So as we're sitting there, just trying to use discernment, and we're even saying to one another, yeah, this could be a hacker. Let's make sure, see what, everybody pay attention to what they're saying, be mindful of this interaction. And so we were just carefully
Mm.
engaging with it. But so almost immediately she began to read our thoughts, and so she would issue responses before we had even articulated a question it was
Mhm.
still in our minds. And then she also was able to tell us deeply personal things that we had not shared with anyone, things that we, each of us had it was just private things, that not even she would have known in life. And so, yeah, so like I said, pretty quickly we realized, hey, this is not a hacker. It's definitely a spirit. It's something spiritual. But then we
Mhm.
were concerned, could it be something malevolent, and just posing as my grandmother? So we continued to engage with it, but just carefully. And and the more we engaged, the more convinced we were that it was my grandmother, because of her specific concern for particular family members, relationships. She apologized for some past hurts, said things that needed to be said to facilitate healing among certain family members. She could see, because she's on the other side, she's able to see with clarity into people's hearts. They can see deeply into the truth of all things and people when they want to, if they, use their energy. And so she could see these destructive patterns in people's lives, the people that she loves deeply. And so she was really concerned. And so out of love, she spoke into these situations in a way to break those patterns and facilitate healing. She could see where people were struggling with mental type issues, depression type issues. And she spoke into that in a way that saved lives, actually. Just saved lives. So all of the communication was geared around health and wholeness, to
Mhm.
facilitate health and wholeness. And it's all, it was around love. And so pretty quickly, Jesus said, you will know them by their fruit. So pretty quickly, in our communications, we were like, yeah, the fruit of this is definitely all good. And to date, we've been communicating with her and other loved ones because it's her portal and she stays at the portal. Whoever wants to communicate, if she allows it, can. And so we have other family members, other loved ones that also communicate with us. But after 3 years of communicating, the fruit of it all has been nothing but good,
Yep.
consistently. And so that's kind of how we determined that it wasn't someone, in the physical, and wasn't anything malevolent, that it is indeed my grandmother.
Mhm. And so she stands guard at this portal so that nothing malevolent can come in, right?
That's correct. She does.
Okay.
And she has other friends, family, loved ones there with her that help her to make sure nothing malevolent comes through. And she has indicated the importance of not play to us, not ever playing with Ouija boards, or which we weren't into that anyway. We weren't, like I said, we were coming from a Christian background. And so we would have been afraid to mess with anything like that, afraid of
Right.
something malevolent, right? So it wasn't as though we were pursuing this or out trying to tap into the other side, and in any way. She came to us, but
Mhm.
she has indicated that it would be dangerous to play with something like a Ouija board, or just to take a blind stab into the spirit realm is dangerous, she tells me.
Okay. Okay.
Did you know it only takes a moment to start the Lexus ES from your smartwatch? Which is the same amount of time it takes to cement your status as unforgettable. With features like the available 12.3-inch touchscreen multimedia display to the spirited V6 engine, the Lexus ES makes every second count. Experience amazing at your Lexus dealer.
Did you know the cost of each illegal immigrant is nearly $9,000 per year, according to the Federation for American Immigration Reform? The total cost to taxpayers since 2021 is $72.8 billion. Current Washington leaders have irresponsibly allowed entry of over 7 million illegals, 5 times the number from our prior elected officials. This election, remember, politicians aren't just ignoring us, they're willfully defying the law they swore to uphold. Advocate for America paid for and is responsible for the content of this ad.
So I want to go back to, you were talking about how your grandmother was stuck for a time, but as opposed to now she is not, and she's kind of got this fluidity to it. Can she come and go from here to the other side or there? I'm not sure what to call it, but can she come and go as she pleases?
Yes, it's like having an open door between the
Okay.
3D physical realm and what she's in 5D, the quantum realm or spirit realm, whatever, language people like to use. But because she has this open door, she is free to go, she could go on into the beyond if she wanted, which is, it's highly stratified and complex. So she hasn't been able to communicate a lot about what this beyond is like. But it's just, deeper into the spiritual realm, further away from the physical plane of existence. So yeah, she has crossed, so she's not actually stuck anymore. And in order to manipulate the physical realm, which is what, when she communicates with us, she basically just comes through her portal, communicates, and then she can pop back through to the other side anytime she likes. But she
Okay.
stays, yeah, she stays close.
Oh, okay. Okay. So that, since she created that opening, does that just stay? Does she, will it ever, is there a risk of it ever closing and like her being gone or just over there for good and that communication stopping? Is that a risk?
It's not something that would just spontaneously happen. It could close, but it would be an intentional closing. The way that I understand it, these portals stay open through interaction. And so the fact that she has interacted with us, she's using the portal, popping in and out of it, it keeps it open. And because we communicate with her, it gives her a reason to communicate. Like if a loved one were to stay and try to reach out to their family. Like if a loved one had a portal and they try to reach out after they cross and it scares their family consistently, oftentimes they will just move on and let the portal close
Hmm.
because they can see that their family is not open to it. And so to linger would just be miserable for them. But because my grandmother was really tenacious in communicating with us and we finally did open to it,
Hmm.
she tells me that it's our interaction, the actual communication keeps it open.
Wow. Wow. One other thing you said there about just the messages, the kinds of messages, there do seem to be these different levels to the messages that people receive. Like I was saying before, like it could be a feather that you asked for, a dime, whatever, what kind of a song on the radio, and they do seem quite a bit more subtle. But you were saying because your grandmother was still in this plane, like she can do something a bit more kind of in your face a little bit, a little more obvious. So I just wanted to clarify that when people are receiving those other types of messages, it's likely it's because your deceased loved one is it has already crossed, and they just don't quite have that access to the physical to manipulate the physical. Correct?
That's correct. And
Okay.
also energy also comes into play. On the other side, they don't sleep, but they rest and they, accumulate energy. Everything is energy. We're all energy. But it's important to have enough energy to manipulate the physical realm. And so, if like when my grandmother was first communicating with us, her energy was low because she had just crossed and she was just getting her bearings and learning how to accumulate energy on the other side.
Mm-hmm.
And so in the initial communications, there would be just like one word, maybe two or three words at a time. The sentences were not as complex, definitely not paragraphs. It would just very simple communication. And a couple times she even said help, which scared us a little. We were like, oh, what do you need? And I would ask her, do you need help crossing? And it was an immediate no. And I'm like, I don't understand. How could she? It upset me a little bit. I'm thinking that she needed help. But once she gained some energy and was able to communicate more, she let us know that she was trying to communicate is that she needed help with energy so that she could say more. So yeah, that's one of the barriers. Like if some people are looking for signs from their loved ones and they're not getting them, and they get discouraged and they wonder, hey, is my loved one even with me? And I would say most assuredly yes, because if that loving bond, that connection is there, your loved one is with you, but they
Hmm.
may just be limited because of their energy levels on how much they can manipulate the physical realm. And also, we probably don't see a lot of things that they're trying to show us. It takes a ton of energy to actually move an object or place something, like to pick an object up from one place and put it in another so that it would be abundantly obvious. And so the more subtle things is what people should be kind of open to, just
Hmm.
open. And if we're present in each moment, we will notice those things. My grandmother tells me most of the time they're right in front of your face, but we're lost in thought. We're not present in the moment, and so we miss them.
Okay. Okay. How can we help them with energy?
The only way that my grandmother knows of that we can actually help with energy is fire, to build a fire.
Oh,
Yeah. Yeah.
whoa! I've never heard that
Fire.
before.
So, yeah, if you light candles around the house, that's helpful. But if you could build like a big, like a fire in a fire pit outdoor, or even a fireplace. But yeah, fire is very helpful. Um,
Wow.
yeah, I've built more fires in in the last few years than I ever thought I would build because to help them out with energy. But they're also able to get energy from the stars in some way, and of course, that's out of
Hmm.
my pay grade. I don't know how they're doing that.
They're shining bright for a reason, aren't they? I don't know. Maybe
Right.
little fires out there in space.
Yeah.
Well, I just have one other question about this. When and I assume because we're talking in the present, she is still communicating with you. She's still putting messages to you. When she does this, do you actually see it as it's being typed?
Mhm. Yes. And she can use more than just the television. That was her initial, and that's the
Hmm.
primary way that she communicates. But she could also use computers, laptops, even cell phones, and printers. And so we've invested in some thermal heat printers because we were blowing through a lot of ink when she first learned how to print things out. We were just tearing up the ink. So these thermal printers, they don't require ink. And so we have a few of those, and they're small. And so then, but it seems that she could say more on the printers. The television is usually, a sentence here, a sentence there, a little bit of communication. But when she uses the printer, she could print a full on letter if she had the energy, just paragraphs. Um,
Whoa. Okay.
so yeah. So, but we see it as it's being typed on the television.
Absolutely incredible. Absolutely incredible. Like, hey, grandma. It's just typing
I
across the
know.
room. That's
Yeah.
so cool. Well,
Yeah.
I so like I was saying, like this whole communication, which is just it's fabulous. It must just be so comforting. Like once you guys were able to settle on, oh, this is her, and then you got to speak to the others in your family who were over there. Just so comforting. But this would take place years after you had started this journey into just a contemplative space about spirituality and those bigger questions like what does happen after we die, is heaven and hell real? Like it started you, this spiritual awakening took place in 2014 is what you said.
Mhm.
Okay.
Yes.
So that, I guess I'm trying to confirm, did that actually, that spiritual awakening or the communication, did that actually kick you off and down the journey from a very much by the book Christian, I assume, sorry, correct me if I'm wrong, to this more like open-minded contemplative mindset?
Yeah, that's a really great question. When I had my spiritual awakening, I was not practicing any form of religion. I was raised in a Christian family, so if you had asked, like, "What religion are you?" I would have said
Mhm.
Christian.
Mm.
Although I was not practicing, I was not plugged into any churches. I was not a Christian. I mean, I was not following Christ. So it's funny how people will identify with a particular faith of their family or whatever without ever making it their own.
Mhm.
Um, Having been raised in the Christian context, I found it all just very off-putting. All of that legalism, fundamentalist type, very dualistic way, all of these dogmas and rules. It never resonated with me. But then when I had this awakening experience, I in my mind I was thinking, this is God. And I guess I should say what happened. I had been experiencing a season of depression, and it just persisted. And it wasn't clinical depression, it was philosophical depression. It was existential angst. And I realize that now. But at the time, I didn't have a way to kind of articulate it. I didn't understand why I felt the way that I felt. And so this heaviness just persisted and finally culminated into a moment where I just cried out to God. And it was more of an if you were there kind of prayer. So it was not a pious prayer by any means. It was very provocative. I was just unleashing my frustrations into the atmosphere, hoping that something might shift. And in the midst of all of that, all of the emotion and that swirl of just chaos in my thoughts, I heard a voice as loud and clear as anything I've ever heard in my life. And the voice just said, "Be still." And instant peace just washed over me. And there that's a verse, "Be still and know that I am God." And it's a verse that people love to quote and get tattoos of and things like that. But at the moment I heard it, I didn't even know it was a verse. So that's the funny thing about it. Yeah. So anyway, that is what caused me to plug into the church, because in my mind, I was thinking, I know this is God. I've had like an experience. I know this peace is just unfathomable, and I want more of it. And like, I wanted to have some sort of groundwork or framework to hang my experience on, a way to understand what had happened to me, some sort of context for what had happened to me. And so, because I'm from a Christian family, I plugged into churches thinking, that was the next step. And so I spent years just like sifting through the various theologies, doctrines, studying, reading the Bible, trying to make sense of everything. And I landed in a more contemplative space before my grandmother crossed. I ultimately came to a place where mainstream Christian answers to life's most important questions were just less than satisfying. They just
Mhm.
didn't do the trick. I mean, I'd had this experience, this ineffable peace, and all of what I was like learning and trying to, and I was plugged in a way. Like, I mean, if they said get in a small group, I got in the small group. If
Mhm.
lead the small group, I led this. I did all the things. Trying to have like an experiential aspect to my faith, and it all just kind of fell flat. And so I had already went into a more contemplative space, which is more experiential. It's more resting in the mystery and experiencing God rather than conceptualizing God, that kind of
Mhm.
space. And so when my grandmother died, I was already in that space. And so a lot of my views had shifted already to a more expansive way of being. And some things I would have, most of the things that she told me, it really just validated kind of where I was already leaning. There were only a few things probably that she shared that weren't already a part of my worldview. And the main thing she shared that was not already a part of my worldview is that reincarnation is true. So yeah, that's kind of how I was already in that contemplative space. And then my grandmother just, she popped back into time and space in a way that just, yeah, it just served to bring everything into sharper focus.
Okay, okay. Well, you know what? Let's get into some of this stuff that you were able to. You were already in the space, already heading in that direction, and then you had these communications that really brought it into focus for you and solidified some things and taught you some new things. So let's talk about some of that information that. Excuse me. Ugh, sick. It's terrible being sick. Um, it's just some of that information that you have been able to uncover. You do include it in your book as well. Um, First, like, you talk about the this process of dying, like the actual dying process. And there's some things that you include in your book as to how this goes. Would you talk about what is that crossing, like that passing process look like? And is it going to be the same for everybody?
That's a great question. Yeah, so and it does not look the same for everyone. We are all in different places interiorly.
Hmm.
So basically, whatever level of consciousness we've attained during our life, we carry that right with us into the spirit realm. But depending on how we cross, I mean, for instance, if, like my grandmother was 95 and she was nearing the end and she knew it. And so although she was aware that her time was nearing, she didn't want to leave, but she was aware of it. And she still had trouble with her crossing, even though, she had time to be prepared to cross. But that's different. Someone who's nearing the end over like a gradual process, like over, the course of some months, they can maybe gain some perspective and kind of be prepared in a sense that, to know that what's about to happen to them. But like if someone's in a car accident and they're suddenly just boom, they're just suddenly catapulted into the spirit realm. It may take a little time to gain some perspective. They may not know that they have died right away.
Hmm.
So it's not the same for everyone. All of our, the way that we all pass is very unique. Our life experience, everything is subjective. Even in this life, everything is subjective. You and I could go to the same museum and view the same art and come away with totally different experiences
Yep.
of that. And so as we cross our experience of that is going to vary from person to person. But typically your family is waiting for you when you cross, your loved ones, people that you know and love. Now, if you cross suddenly, instantly, um, it may not be an instant greeting. Like your people may not be congregated around you in that way, but they will find
Hmm.
you. They will know, because we are all interconnected. We are really all one part of one consciousness, and so everything is interconnected. And when we have these soul connections with people, that doesn't go away when we die. So the people that we're connected to on the other side, they stay connected to us,
Hmm.
and and tapped into what's going on. They can feel, if we're thinking of them, things like that. But yeah, and then after we cross and we kind of gain our bearings about being on the other side, and usually there are like spirit guides, family members, people like that trying to help us to figure things out, navigate things on the other side. My grandmother communicates that there is a fire that everyone passes through, and this fire is purifying fire. So it's not retributive; it's restorative, and it's intended to burn away everything that interferes with love, which is, all of the egoic constructs that we accumulate in our lives.
Hmm.
Um, and this fire is not thrust upon us. There again, free will is prominent. We have freedom in our physical lives, and we have the free will carries over into the spirit realm. We don't have to go through this fire. Like, we're not forced to go through it, but if we resist, we suffer. It's kind of like in the physical realm. If we resist doing our inner work, if we resist letting go of those ego constructs, we suffer in
Hmm.
life, because we're clinging to the ego.
Right.
So yeah, so really, as we cross, we're not embodied in a physical body anymore, but our journey continues right on. We continue um, the journey in becoming whole, or coming into alignment. All of that continues right along in that same vein, but just on a different plane of existence, with a
Hmm.
higher perspective. When we get to the other side, we see things with clarity. We're not clouded by this physical existence that deludes us. We get distracted because in this physical world we forget the spiritual side of things. We're
Hmm.
blind to it. We're asleep to it, or whatever. But then when we cross, we awaken to all of that, and so it's an opportunity to do our inner work and integrate some things from a higher vantage point, from a higher perspective. We see with clarity into other people, when we're on the other side, but also that is we see with clarity into our own inner processes too. All of that shadow material is brought into the light.
Okay, so there is a process of do you have to review like that shadow material? Is there a review process? I've heard of that in like
Mhm.
indie stories and such. Is that true? that from what you found?
Uh, yes, yes. She says that it is like that. It's like it's more like you see things with clarity in such a way that you see your side of things, but you also see and feel the other person in the equation also. So like if
Okay.
you did wrong someone, you would see it from your perspective with clarity, the ways that you were maybe being egotistical or selfish, and all of that would come to light in yourself. But also you would see and feel how the other person felt and experienced your actions. And so, but it's not in a way to like condemn or shame or punish anyone. It's intended to make us whole. It's intended to bring us into alignment. It's the light of truth, is intended to free us, liberate us from all of those ego constructs that do cause all of the pain and suffering and evil in the world.
Okay. Okay. So once you go through this purifying fire, you meet up with loved ones, you do go through this review process, everything's la di da di da. Then do you go to heaven or hell?
According to my grandmother, there are no like geographical locations as such. There's
Please
no
talk about
place.
it.
Yeah. Yeah, so, from in my perspective and what my grandmother has confirmed, heaven is not a place we go to, it's a place we come from. And Jesus even said, "The kingdom of heaven is within you." And so heaven is very much an inner atmosphere. And hell, same thing, it's an inner atmosphere. Jeff Foster said, "Heaven is this moment, and hell is the burning desire for this moment to be different." And
Mm,
that really is it. If we could just be fully in the moment, just drop down out of our thoughts in the present moment and just open hearted to whatever arises. That's what heaven is. It's to embrace life in a way that life is able to flow through us, and we're not resisting. We're not, putting on that false self persona out into the world. That we just live wholeheartedly. And hell is the resistance to what is. That's why we suffer and we generate suffering for others around us. Yeah, but heaven, and well, I will say that there are on the other side, in the spiritual realm, it's highly stratified and complex to the point that, a lot of times when I ask questions about it, my grandmother will say, "No say." And that indicates that either something is too ineffable to put into words. There are times she says, "I want to tell you, but I can't. There are no words. I can't think of how to tell you because there just are no words to tell you what I need to tell you."
yeah.
Um, but then in some instances, it's things that I'm not supposed to know, and she'll say that you're not supposed to know that. I can't tell you that. But it seems that the beyond is just so complex. There are no words for it, but there are places in the beyond because it's so vast, that would be heavenly. Free from a lot of the things we think about as impediments to our peace and wholeness, exterior impediments to our peace and wholeness. So yeah, there are places in the vastness of this multiverse that we live in where you could go, and I guess it would be heavenly. And I think there are places that would be more, that we could think of as more like a hellish type situation. But the thing is, the interior creates the exterior. So really, it's an outflow of what is within flows from, in as above, so below. As within,
Mhm.
so without. And so we
Mhm.
do create our own realities. It's an inside out job. So whatever we cultivate inwardly is going to manifest exteriorly, and we're going to move in that direction. So if we are interiorly, if we're in hell, we're going to end up exteriorly in hellish circumstances around people who are also in hellish circumstances. And but if we cultivate a heavenly inner atmosphere, then the external will come into alignment with that also. But that's
Okay.
true here in the physical as well as in the spiritual realm.
Right. Okay. So if we are cultivating that inner world of just depression and dark thoughts and negativity, that there may could, because it's all subjective, that may come with us when that crossing happens and at that point.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, see, and that's another thing that was really important that my grandmother has really, like I said, there was someone in our family who was really struggling with some depression issues, like mental health type issues, and even some like suicidal type thoughts, I would venture to say. And my grandmother was able to speak into that, in a way that really brought a lot of healing and perspective. And it's because people are suffering so much. We live in this world of duality, and there's so many things that cause depression and people to suffer and struggle in that way. And a lot of times when we're in those dark places, we think if we could just opt out, like this is just too much. I want some relief. But my grandmother has really reiterated that you don't opt out. Like you have to face these things, even if they're painful.
Mm-hmm.
The whole point is that we come into wholeness. We don't opt out. And so if you do opt out, you carry it with you on the other side, and it's more difficult to navigate it on the other side because it's like pulling the band-aid off all at once,
Mm-hmm.
like because you see everything with such clarity on the other side. There's nothing is hidden. And so that's even more painful than working through it slowly here in the physical realm. We're afforded that we could be deluded in some ways, like we could lie to ourselves enough, and it's like a little bit at a time. We awaken usually gradually. And it's because if we were to see everything awful about ourselves all at once, it might be too much to bear, or I don't know. It's just, it allows us this gradual perspective shift. We come into alignment more gradually. On the other side, everything is laid bare. So we're just completely vulnerable and laid bare on the other side. And then, so from that perspective, it's easier if we would stay here in the physical and do our work here.
Okay. Is that a reason that we do reincarnate to be able to work through it, any issues that we've got, gradually in the 3D?
Yes. Yeah, that would be one of the reasons that people would choose to reincarnate. It's like I said, it's easier to work our karma out in the same level of existence that we created it. And we created in this 3D reality. And also because we live in this world of duality, it's like a fast track learning experience. And so it allows us an opportunity because of the tension of opposites in this world, the physicality. All of life is designed to awaken us. I say that all the time, but it really is true. Every moment is an opportunity to awaken. So all of these things that are so difficult, and the suffering, I mean, people don't like to hear this, but it's often through the difficulties and the suffering that we do awaken. That those are the things that sort of jolt us out of our comfort zone and bring us, into more alignment with that. People grow more, from a struggle than if they live a life of comfort. Now, it need not be so. We don't have to. We can awaken without the suffering. I mean, that's always an option, but we typically don't. And so yeah, it's about an opportunity to also to get things right with people that we may have gotten things really wrong with, to love more fully, to realize that relationships are really the most important thing, and to not get diluted into these egoic constructs that drive us during our lives.
Mm-hmm.
But also people reincarnate because they miss certain things about the physical world. I mean, if we haven't done much of our inner work, or and we're still very much attached to the physical aspect of things, which is, I mean, most people are, they addicted to certain things. We really, if entertainment, food, everybody on the other side tells me they miss their favorite foods. They miss, particular foods that they really enjoyed. My grandmother misses sewing, and she was a gifted seamstress in life, and she tells us that she misses sewing. And then my dog, who, he crossed before my grandmother did, but she tells me that he misses food. He misses food, and he misses touch. He misses being petted
Oh.
physically, the physical touch.
Mhm.
But then when I said, "Does he miss me?" She said, "He's with you." So no, like he's always with you. And I'm like, well,
Oh.
I miss him, because I don't see him, even though he's with me. I don't, like I don't see him or perceive it that way. So, yeah, so it's just an opportunity to enjoy physicality again, too, in some cases.
Okay. And you bring up a good point, something special to my heart. I have my own belief about it, but animal souls, is that
Yeah.
they have their own souls. They reincarnate. They stay with. Do they stay with us like lifetime after lifetime?
Yeah, so my grandmother has said that, all animals have their own spirit,
Mhm.
they do have souls, and but the only animals that reincarnate are the ones that have a loving connection with a human. So
Oh.
like if a wild bird dies, the energy doesn't go away because, energy cannot be destroyed, only transforms. So they would just shift into the spirit realm. And from there, I don't know. But they wouldn't necessarily reincarnate into as another bird. But
Mhm.
their consciousness would go on, in some capacity. But animals that form a loving connection with humans stay connected to those humans, and they do reincarnate if their human reincarnates. And so the way that my grandmother has explained it to me is like my dog Luke. He crossed before me, and he remains with me in spirit, and he will continue to remain with me. And then when I cross, we will both be together in spirit. And then if I choose to reincarnate, he will follow me into the next life cycle. And I've asked, could he come back now? Like, could he come back in this life? And she said, it is possible, but it's rare, and it shouldn't happen because there's a chance of getting separated. And so, if,
Oh.
the best way to do it is within each life cycle, one time, one life cycle per incarnation.
Hmm.
So that's kind of how that works. So it's based on our loving connection. She told me she saw a chicken leave. She saw a chicken reincarnate that was connected to someone. Yeah.
do, do they always reincarnate as the same species?
Yeah, that's something else.
Oh.
She tells me that Luke has always been a bulldog, and that dogs are always dogs, chickens are always chickens,
Oh.
that kind of thing. Yeah.
That is that makes my heart so happy. I don't know. That's just it's cool. Yeah. I've got a lot
Yeah.
of animals I'll be reincarnating with.
Yeah.
Well, as in regards to the process and the reality of reincarnation, so we come back, we choose to come back to deal with unfinished business or things that we need to do better, that because we miss things. Wouldn't this process, because it's all part of our spiritual awakening, wouldn't this process be so much easier if we could remember what we were coming back to correct?
Yeah. Yeah, that's something that, yeah, I've always thought that too. But the way that my grandmother explains it to me is that remembering would be a distraction. It
Oh.
would slow us down. I mean, in fact, in this one incarnation that we're in, our memories within this one incarnation are often an impediment to actual awakening. They keep us tied down. We're stuck in regret or shame or fear or whatever. We all of these different, very human emotions that get tied to the past. And so if we were to remember all of our past lives at once, it would just be too much. We would live distracted. We wouldn't be immersed in the incarnation that we are currently in. And the way it kind of works is when we incarnate, it's like a constriction of awareness. And then when we leave this incarnation, when we die, there's an expansion of awareness. And on the other side, we see with clarity all of these things, and we're able to integrate. And so it's like a transcending and including. We integrate, do some inner work, and then we come back. And so it's a chance to yeah to we can awaken at any moment. There need not be like it's not a continuum. It's not as though, like the Hindus believe that I believe it's in Hindu philosophy that we continue to reincarnate until we reach enlightenment. So it's kind of a progression. Like each incarnation, we get a little better, we learn a little more, and then eventually one day we become enlightened. I believe in their view, we could even be like other life forms, working our way up to a human. So it's very progressive. But according to my grandmother, it's not like that at all. We can awaken at any moment. Like always, every moment is an opportunity to awaken. And so each life cycle is a clean slate, a fresh opportunity to get things right so that we're not weighed down by all of these, errors of the past or whatever.
Okay. You just said something I was going to ask you about. I was listening to you on JB Johnson's program, and you said
Yeah.
reincarnation is, can't remember how you phrase it. Reincarnation is the way to get things right. What happens when we get things right?
Yeah. So, well, reincarnation is a choice. It's always a choice. And so we could, technically, we're free to choose to reincarnate again, even after we reach an enlightened state. But my grandmother tells me most people wouldn't want to do that because they've already, they've
Yeah.
gotten to that peace and wholeness. And so why would you want to forget and start back over in another incarnation? But yeah, you would have a sense of peace and balance. So you would continue in your journey, and I believe that we're always learning and growing. And like I said, this world that we live in is so vast, we can't even comprehend it. And so we would just continue on from there. But also, she does tell me that everything is headed toward a progression into something more. It would be the best way to articulate it would be the resurrection life that Jesus shows us, that everything's headed toward that resurrection life, and it's a higher dimension of being is what it is.
Oh.
And so over time, as humanity collectively awakens and becomes whole collectively, then we will shift into a higher dimension, a higher state of being where, in spiritual circles, you hear people talk about 5D.
Mhm.
But in reality, that's just a metaphor, because 5D in actuality is where my grandmother is. And so it's very much not physical, it's just a spiritual existence. And whatever we're headed into is both physical and spiritual. It's like a merging of the two in a way that's so much better, or so much more expansive. It's not as limited, I should say, as either this physical 3D realm or even the limitations imposed on my grandmother in the 5D realm. So where we're headed is into a dimension beyond all of that, where there's like a marriage of the spirit and the physical. Jesus, we're told, just appeared into locked rooms, rooms with locked doors. He would just materialize, and then he would just dematerialize. But also, his disciples were able to touch him, and he ate fish. So it's something very much physical.
Mhm.
And also there were instances his disciples were talking to him and they didn't recognize him until he revealed himself in the moment. And so whatever this body, the way that he showed up, the way that he manifested, whatever that was, that's kind of what we're all headed into. And so, yeah, I think that as we do our inner work, you get this inner peace initially, like an inner balance, so that regardless of if you were enlightened in this physical world, you would still live in a world of duality with evil and with all of these opportunities for suffering. But you would have a peace in the midst of it. But everything is kind of headed toward where collectively everyone is awakened. And once that happens, there wouldn't be all of that suffering, because the ego is what generates the suffering. And so once everyone transcends that, we can shift into a higher way of being. And it's like I said, it's out of my pay grade. I don't really have language for it, but it's something
Yeah.
beyond anything we could imagine.
Yeah, yeah, and it just seems like it just goes on and on and on. It's the concept of there is no beginning, there is no ending, there just is,
Mm.
just is. Yeah, it's out of my pay grade too. Um, well, I did have one particular question. I'm gonna throw one more at you here, and then we will tell folks where they can find you online. You wrote in your book that people are always born into the same astrological placements, and that
Mm.
jumped out to me. Why? Can you elaborate on how you learned that, and what possibly might be like the function of something like that?
Yeah. Yeah. So the way that I learned that, I was asking my grandmother, are you familiar with the Enneagram?
Mm. Oh.
Okay. So, well, it's a personality typing system. And it's something that I have studied and used, and it's been helpful to me. I think, I feel like a lot of personality tests or systems kind of serve to keep people in a box. They tell you this is who you are and this is what you do, and, or whatever. But with the Enneagram, it's more, instead of putting you in a box, it sets you free from the box when it's used in the proper way. And it kind of shows you how you get lost and then how you get out of that, like a pathway. It's like a map, back into wholeness. And it basically works by, highlighting your core fears and your core desires. And see, those are your core motivators in life. And so once you realize those things, it brings into sharper focus, kind of like why you do, we have patterns of behavior that bring us, like how you do anything is how you do everything. We
Mm-hmm.
always circle back to those same triggers, those same, compulsions, the same, mental narratives. And so, as someone coming from, studying the Enneagram, I was asking my grandmother about the Enneagram. And we were just having a fun conversation around it. And I asked, are we the same? Because in the Enneagram, you're a number. Your type is classified through numbers, 1 through 9. So you'd be a number on the Enneagram. And I said, so, and I'm a 5 on the Enneagram. So I said, am I always a 5, or does that change? Like, was in my past life, was I something else? And she goes, no, you're always a 5. And so that brought us into talking about personality a little more, our essence. And she said that, and I said, do we have the same birthdays in every incarnation? And she said, no, but you have the same astrological placement. So what that means is you would have the same core personality, because you are you. The things that get burnt away in the fire, the things that we're supposed to, like transcend to become whole, all of that they're false. It's who we create ourselves to be. It's the persona, the mask that we wear in the world, the ego constructs, how we like to show up, how we want to be perceived. But who we truly are, who God created us to be, our essence, that's the part of us that never dies. That's the part that cannot be diminished. And so when we do physically die, that's what slips into the, the etheric realm. And that's what reincarnates. And so we are us, and our same personality, same sense of humor. I mean, all of that, our essence carries on. And that's really what it means to become whole, is to come back to that essence, the core of who you really are.
Fascinating. Absolutely fascinating. Thank you.
Yeah.
Brandy, why don't you tell my audience where they can find and follow you online, and where they can pick up a copy of the book?
Yeah, thank you. So my website is brandyanderson.net. And from there are links to all of my socials. But my handle on all of my socials is Brandy the Mystic. And my book is Through the Veil, A Glimpse into the Afterlife. And it's available on Amazon in paperback, Kindle, and Audible.
All right. And help me close out this awesome conversation. Would you like to leave us with any final thoughts, words of wisdom, or a piece of advice?
Yeah, I would just say that death is just the doorway into an expansive journey of becoming whole. Yeah, that's what I will leave us with.
Author of Through the Veil, A Glimpse into the Afterlife, Brandy Anderson. Thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you so much. It's been a pleasure to be here.
Thank you so much, Brandy, for joining me. It was such a pleasure getting to speak with you. Learn more about my guest at brandyanderson.net and by following on social. And if you would like to learn more about her journey and the things that she has learned, pick up your very own copy of Through the Veil, A Glimpse into the Afterlife. All links can be found in the show notes. During our conversation, Brandy piqued my curiosity yet again about something that I have never looked into, the Enneagram. How I have overlooked this in all of my years, I cannot say, but never say never, because I have now. And I took a test to learn my own Enneagram number and personality type, and had a friend print out a summed up description of what my number says about me. And I'm going to read it for the first time with you guys. Let's see how accurate the Enneagram is for me. Oh my gosh. I'm scared. I might cut this part out, y'all. So just, heads up. All right. So I ended up as a type 4. Here we go. An Enneagram type 4 is also known as the individualist, the contemplator, or the romantic. I don't know, maybe not. They are often described as introspective. They are self-aware, sensitive, and reserved. Creative. They are expressive, original, and artistic. I like to think so. I do. Emotional. They are in tune with their feelings and can experience the full range of human emotions. Can people not experience the full range of human emotions? Am I just super emotional? I don't know. Identity driven. They define themselves by what makes them different from others. I do that. Motivated by avoiding ordinariness. They seek out deeper meaning and authentic feelings. I feel so called out right now. Empathetic. They are supportive, gentle, and playful in relationships. However, they can also be, moody, calm down, self-conscious, and struggle with criticism. They may feel like they are missing something, such as self-confidence, social ease, or emotional tranquility. Come on. 4s may feel more antsy and stressed when things are going well because they are not used to it. Ugh. They may feel more calm and balanced when the outside world matches their internal world of flux. Dudes, man, pretty spot on, actually. I do feel so called out. Very interesting. Very interesting. I'm glad I looked. Maybe. I don't know. I'll think about it later. I'll obsess and stress about it later. I have included the link to the Enneagram test that I took below in the show notes. Check it out. If anyone takes it, let me know if it was accurate for you, too. I'd be curious to hear all about it. Follow the show on social and subscribe on YouTube at Paranormal Girl Pod. You can also help Paranormal Girl reach new ears by sharing a link to your favorite episode. I don't know, you know what your friends like. Share it with a friend, or by leaving a rating and review wherever you listen. I sure appreciate it. That will wrap this week's show. I hope you all have a phenomenal rest of your day. I will see you guys back here next Tuesday. Until then, stay safe, keep the nightlight on, and sleep with one eye open.